Hi, this is Erick Waldron with Waldron Instruments and Guitars. Today we're going to be bending some sides for a triple O guitar. We're going to be using a pattern that we made in-house with Waldron Instruments. And what we're going to be doing is using a heat bender with a heat blanket to bend the sides of some mahogany. After I've scribed in a line actually on my piece of mahogany, what I'll do is I'll cut both sides where they are the same so that they match, where there's a book matching of the wood. And I typically will draw a line indicating which side is the more flat side of the wood. And then the most important thing for us is making sure in a book match that we actually have the wood match up on both sides, so that on the back of the guitar, down where the tailpiece of the guitar is, it actually meets together and actually has a look of uniformity. So now I'm going to go ahead and start prepping the bender to bend our sides for the triple O guitar. First thing I'll do is I'll turn on our heat bender and the heat blanket. Normally I like to bend the sides at a maximum temperature of about 360 degrees. So first what I'll do is I'll turn the heat bender on. It has a heat blanket on it. And this heat bender, as it's warming up, the wood, of course, in this case, when you put the water on it, will become pliable and it'll be able to be bent. So now I'm just going to spray liberally on this piece of mahogany some water. And typically what I'll do is I'll use the margin of the outside of the bender as a straight line, and I'll use that for the bottom of my guitar. Typically I will measure on the piece of wood how far out of the bender it sticks, because I want the other piece of wood to match perfectly. So it's imperative, since these two pieces of wood on each side are the same length, they need to be sticking out at the exact same distances on each side of the heat bender. I make sure that the heat blanket completely covers the piece of wood. As it's heating up, I'll actually use a temperature gauge to find out at what temperature the heat blanket is moved up to. Typically, for me, and this isn't always the case, and it depends on the species of wood, once it gets up to around 250 degrees, I'll go ahead and start the initial bending of the actual piece of wood. I'm simply using these gloves to hold down the heat blanket against the form of the wood. We use this heat bender for several different types of guitars and different body shapes, and so it's conformed to those different shapes over the years, and it's just basically I'm having to hold it down to make sure that it applies heat to all the wood. What I'm doing now is cranking down a press that is pushing down into the waist of the guitar body. So this will form the waist as I crank down, and typically this is how most heat presses work. You'll bend from the center and then work your way out, and there are several different ways to do it, and everyone has their method. But I'll slowly crank down in the middle and make sure that as you go slowly, you don't want to hear any cracking or popping, because that'll indicate that your wood might be too brittle, or that the heat is actually driving the moisture out too fast out of your wood. Once I have it snug but not tight, then I'll start on the outsides. In this case, I can tell that the wood is actually getting pretty dry, so I'll reapply some moisture to the areas that will be bent. Obviously these springs are pretty taut. Takes a pretty fair amount of pressure to pull on them, but it also is imperative to have that kind of pressure to hold down these sides. Try to move slowly when applying pressure with these springs because they can snap aside very easily. Once I get it into its shape, I'll check my temperature, and I'm up close to 350 degrees, so I'll go ahead and turn it off. There are different ways to do this. Typically I'll turn mine off and leave it in the form and let it go all the way until it cools down. Typically that'll be about 15 minutes. When you have completed, this is a couple of different sides that we've bent. This is actually a piece of rosewood, but once you've bent it, it will actually stay in the form that's been made from being in the heat press. And so once it's formed, then you can take it on to glue in your head block and your tail block, and then on to kerfing. So that is a demonstration of basically how to bend the side. There are several different forms that we actually have with Waldron guitars and Waldron instruments, and you can check them out on waldronguitars.com or waldroninstruments.com. We have nearly 20 different models of guitars and different sides that we can bend and form, or that you can have plans sent to you. So if we can be of service, check us out at waldroninstruments.com or waldronguitars.com.